4 for a boy. Starting at the academy was a significant milestone in becoming a ninja, and made Haruhi feel like she'd finally grown into one of the big kids. The months leading up to it felt painstakingly slow. Haruhi's family were all busy except for her, who'd spent most of her days training with Sasuke or counting down the days with Inku. When the day finally arrived, it had been weeks since her whole family were in the same place at the same time. But her parents and Shisui cleared their morning schedules to watch her entrance ceremony anyway. I can't believe you're already in the academy, Haruhi. Where did the time go? Her mum commiserated in between compulsive fussing, trying to comb Haruhi's hair till he flat with her fingers for the 100th time. I feel like last week you were still my little baby, and now you're a student. Mom, it's starting! Haruhi pointed at the crowd gathered in the middle of the schoolyard. I've got to join the other kids. Not before I get a goodbye hug. Another? She nearly snapped, but bit it down. Haruhi leaned in to give her mom a quick hug, but ended up with another kiss on the head and her mother straightening her collar. Give your father a hug as well. Dad had been checking his watch, but glanced up when Haruhi turned to him. She ignored her big brother snickering at the excessive fussing. Remember, you're representing the clan as well, Haruhi. Her dad patted her awkwardly on the back. You're still young, but this is your first step on the road of ninjas. Work hard and you'll help uphold the clan's honor. Your conduct at school reflects on us all, as the Uchiha are only as strong as its weakest member. I will, Dad. Brimming with nerves and feeling like the Uchiha's reputation rested on her small shoulders, Haruhi was finally able to go join her classmates. Don't be sad, Inori. It's a few more years until she's an adult. She heard her dad try to comfort his wife. Oh, don't even hint at it, Kaji. She'll be a genin before we know it, and she was such a cute baby. She hasn't been a baby in several years now. Don't remind me. Maybe we should have another. Another baby? Dad stutters. Haruhi stopped in her tracks and rolled around, Shisui reacting just the same. Just kidding. Their mum laughed. Good luck, sweetie. Go be great and make loads of friends. Haruhi stood clustered with her new classmates, watching an old ninja hold the entrance speech up at the podium. Over in the audience, her parents had found Inabi and his fiancée, who were there to watch Taiko. She met Shisui's eye from afar and he gave her 2 thumbs up, just as she learned the grandpa at the front was none other than the 3rd Hokage. When Haruhi was a baby, there had been a 4th Hokage, but he died killing the Kyuubi, and the old Hokage stepped back into the role as village leader. Haruhi had seen his face carved into Hokage Mountain, alongside the other 3 men who had shared the title. The 4 Hokages overlooking the village with fierce expressions. Though, in real life, the 3rd Hokage, Sarutobi Hiruzen, was smaller, older, and less intimidating than his stone counterparts. Haruhi was put in the same class as Taiko, and they migrated together amidst a very unfamiliar situation. Their class instructor was Funeno Sensei, a stocky man with a kind face who started the day going around the class having the kids introduce themselves, before lining everyone up for a basic morning stretch and exercise routine. Haruhi had half expected they'd start learning complex jutsu right away, to do real ninja stuff, but that wasn't the case. After an easy warm-up routine, they were shown around the academy until lunch, and the rest of the day was spent outside in the yard. Funeno Sensei divided the class into 2 teams for a game. It was complex and full of timers and point scores, but active enough everyone got dragged into it. There were 3 balls involved. The biggest was the score ball, to be carried and thrown between teammates, and any ground contact lost the team points. The second was a medium-sized squishy ball, used to take out opponents for 5 minutes if hit. For last was the timer ball, that would earn the team holding it points if they held it whenever the timer rang every 10 minutes. Funeno Sensei called it Troops and Hoops, but Haruhi didn't know why. There were no hoops. Yet something about the game really resonated with her. Maybe that's why she took it so seriously, because Haruhi entered the game determined to win. After a slow start where everyone familiarized themselves with the rules and rhythm of the game, Haruhi had deduced there were ways to optimize their play. First off, they needed better cooperation for point scoring. Seeing as she was one of the few who knew what was best, Haruhi took charge of her team, starting with convincing Taiko and another boy, Hyuga Neji, to deal with the squishy ball and take out opponents. Both were good enough they could play other positions too, but her thinking was, if all the members of the other team were taken out in timeout, it'd leave the field open to keep scoring. "And what will you do?" Taiko asked. "I'll play defense," Haruhi declared. "Defense isn't an official position unless you have the squishy ball," Neji protested. "What do you mean?" "Like this," Haruhi set off running, shouting, "Cover me!" And then she dashed after Akemichi Makaro, who was about to steal the scoreball from their team. Makaro was twice Haruhi's size, but speed and determination alone saw her tackle him so hard they crashed to the ground, and the two went rolling. They'd barely gotten back on their feet when Neji hit Makaro with a squishy ball. "You're out, Makaro-kun!" Fineno Sensei shouted. 5 minutes timeout. "But she tackled me! Is that allowed?" Makaro protested, dusting off his shirt. "It is allowed," their sensei said patiently, while the Akemichi went to the sideline for the next 5 minutes. Their new strategy cleared away the opposition, leaving Haruhi's teammates with a gradually clearing field to score points, quickly increasing their lead in an almost overwhelming way. Boosting morale on their side while making the other side frustrated, which only helped them more. A quick-footed girl named Tenten was doing a good job keeping hold of the timer ball, even the occasions she lost it. Tenten was really good at wrestling it back before the timer rang again. Through it all, Haruhi kept up an iron defense, despite her opposition wisening up and forming a counter-strategy. She even held firm in the face of brimming mutiny. "I want to protect the timer ball too, but Tenten won't pass it! She always throws it to others!" A black-haired boy named Lee complained. He'd messed up every single position he tried, and now came whining to Haruhi. "Why don't you play defense with me instead, Lee-kun?" Haruhi suggested. Even if he wouldn't be any good at it, it was the only position he wouldn't be ruining the play for everyone else, and Haruhi could cover for his slacks. "But I want to play timer!" "What do you want me to do?" It wasn't in their powers to make the team pass the ball to Lee, and it was hard to argue that they should. Each time someone did, Lee'd make a mess of things, so they didn't anymore. Just then, the opposite team made aim at her, Makaro throwing the squishy ball with determined ferocity, trying to shoot her out of the game. He might be slower than Haruhi on foot, but his big size also made his throws brutally hard. Haruhi only barely ducked in time, and instead the ball hit Lee straight in the face, so hard he fell. "You're out, Lee-kun!" their sensei shouted. "Ah, see? You're too slow, Lee-kun! If you want to play as a timer, go get better first!" Haruhi snapped, making the boy wince. Haruhi picked up the ball and turned to Makaro, ready to exact her vengeance. Lee may be a useless teammate, but he was still on her team. By their second day, friend groups were already starting to form, causing a switch in seating arrangements. The boy who'd sat next to Taiko and Haruhi, Ryugen Yatego, went to sit with Akemichi Makaro instead, not even glancing towards the Uchihas. "What a sore loser," Taiko muttered, and Haruhi laughed. Yatego had been on the other team, where Taiko had struck him out of the game several times. It was only minutes until Yatego's abandoned seat was approached by a frizzy blonde girl with thick, round glasses. "Hello, my seat from yesterday is taken." She pointed to the front row, where Tenten was laughing with a couple of classmates. "It's nice to meet you. My name is Shiho. Would you mind if I take this seat?" At least she wasn't a sore loser, or she'd never have approached him. Shiho had been on the opposite team during Troops and Hoops too, but she'd been hit with a squishy ball from the get-go, only to come back on the field after 5 minutes and immediately get taken out again. "Hi, Chio-chan. Sure, go ahead," Haruhi offered. "My name is Uchiha Haruhi, and this is Uchiha Taiko." Shio heaved the bulging backpack onto the desk with a clatter, so overloaded with books it'd probably break her foot if dropped wrong. Are you siblings? Shio inquired, pushing her thick glasses up her nose. Nope, Taiko shook his head. Cousins. We're from the Uchiha clan. Ah, my mistake. I should have figured you're of the clan that runs the military police. Shio said with a stiff nod. Yeah, my uncle works for the police, Taiko said. And my mum, Harumi added. Dad is in the barrier team. My parents are ninja. My mum's a nurse and Dad works for the border patrol. But we're not part of a clan, Shio informed them. That was pretty normal. The majority of their class didn't belong to a clan. Instead, they were children of one or two ninja parents. If not, they had someone else. Perhaps a close relative, guardian, or even a committed next-door neighbor who was invested in conditioning the child from an early age, which gave them the opportunity to become a ninja down the line. It didn't mean they would choose that path, though usually they did, but at least the option was there when they reached academy age. Those who did not, well, there'd been a few in her class who were what most nicknamed civilian kids. Children raised the civilian way. Konoha had the largest civilian population of the 5 great hidden villages. Though as many civilians as there were, they were still outnumbered by ninjas. The dominating percentage of ninjas and military focus was what made Konoha a hidden village, instead of a normal village. Konoha held a balance where the two social groups coexisted pretty well, though they didn't often mix outside business hours. The reason was that civilians kind of stayed civilians. During the game, Harui had counted 6 civilian kids. They'd been obvious to her, and not only because their clothes had been hopelessly civilian standards. There were several dressed worse, but that was more the result of poverty. No, it was in their soft physiques, bad postures, and how they'd been absolutely crushed in the game the day before, no matter if they'd been on the winning team or not. Like that kid, Rock Lee. One could see he was a civilian kid from miles off. Shio hadn't done well either, but Harui could tell she'd been conditioned. Skill was different than basic conditioning, and her lacking performance was either because Shio wasn't motivated to try, or she lacked talent. But for those civilian-raised children, there hadn't been anyone to condition them from an early age, and it showed. Most couldn't keep up, and by the end of the first week, only Rock Lee remained of those civilian kids to still show up for classes. The next months were a blur of introductory classes. They ran lapses, learned katas, did obstacle runs, jumping exercises, stretches and target practice. Fortunately, Fununo Sensei was a solid instructor, and knew how to motivate them without letting anyone goof off. Not that Harui'd ever consider being a slacker. She was very motivated. Harui was determined to be the best, and her scores showed it was very likely to happen, even if there were a couple contenders who weren't far behind. After 3 months, Fununo Sensei started up sparring lessons in taijutsu. The rules were simple enough. Fununo Sensei would call 2 students into a circle in the yard for the matches. They'd stick to martial arts only, no chakra or weapons allowed, and the goal was to subdue or push the opponent out of the ring. Harui-chan, step forwards. You'll spar against... His eyes jumped right over Taiko to someone in the back. Shio-chan. They stepped into the ring and faced each other, their hands forming the seal of confrontation. 10 seconds later, Shio was defeated. Harui-chan wins. Fununo Sensei called the match. Oh, Shio breathed, eyes magnified to comical size through her thick glasses. Harui stepped back and helped her up. Every victory felt nice, but winning against Shio didn't ignite the same rushing pride as winning against Taiko or Sasuke did. Shio just wasn't a very motivated fighter. Still, Shio took the defeat better than half her clan ever would. They did the Seal of Reconciliation and went back to watch Taiko being matched against Tenten. Their spar dragged on. Tenten had a civilian father, a kunoichi mother, and trained from an early age. She was a cheery girl, which scored a little above average, but what she didn't have was a clan to help her the way Taiko did. Taiko won in the end, but barely. Haruhi didn't like it when Taiko struggled. She knew what she'd do in his situation, but Taiko's strengths and hers weren't the same. He'd always been short for his age and preferred fighting with a weapon that elongated his reach, which wasn't allowed in an academy taijutsu spar. "That was a tricky spar," Haruhi commented idly. "But I've seen you do better." It was a white lie. As far as she could see, Taiko had fought the best he could. "We can't all have brothers like Shinshui or Shisui to train us, can we?" Taiko snapped, making Haruhi feel a twinge of annoyance. Shisui helped when he could, but he didn't have a lot of time. She worked hard too. The next out was Hyuga Neji against Rock Lee, where everyone knew the outcome. Rock Lee was very eccentric, very loud, very determined, and very bad at just about everything. He didn't stand a chance against Hyuga Neji. Honestly, he'd probably have lost against Shiho. Shiho winced with sympathy when Neji sent Rock Lee crashing into the ground, even though several of the other kids laughed loudly and pointed. After watching these matches, Haruhi felt confident she knew what level everyone was at. She was wrong. Haruhi had taken note of several skilled classmates and pinpointed her biggest competition. Taiko was good and received clan training too, but he'd yet to take Haruhi in a spar. Heck, Sasuke won against Taiko, though Haruhi was pretty sure her cousin could take several of her other classmates too. He was a stubborn one. Tenten and Akimichi Makaro both scored well in most subjects. Another good student was Iroha, one of 3 brothers in their class, and Yatako was reasonably talented too. But Haruhi should have paid closer attention to Hyuga Neji. His score started out in the upper rankings for the first few marks, and once he understood what was required, he started climbing, steeply and quickly, until he was breathing down Haruhi's neck. Haruhi was horribly competitive, and the prospect of failing was blood-curdling. To her family, to her clan, failing was synonymous with not being the best. Haruhi had to keep her #1 spot, and she was willing to sacrifice a lot to keep it. Haruhi found that out after Fumino-sensei matched her up against Neji. She'd entered the ring, anticipating it'd be a challenging match since Neji, just like her, was undefeated in class spars. However, his spars had also been against kids Haruhi had defeated too, and no part of her had thought, not truly, that she could walk away as anything less but a victor. They did the seal of confrontation on Fumino-sensei's instruction, eyes locked as they fell back into position. And then... begin! They charged. It was the most frustrating match of her short life. Neji was just as fast, but his movements were more fluid and precise in ways hers weren't. While she had better flexibility and a larger variety of moves, she struggled to land any hits. And they were both horribly, stubbornly, unbendingly determined to win. Haruhi lost. In hindsight, Haruhi would tell herself the defeat was likely good for her character, but at the time, face down in the dirt, bleeding, bruised and disheveled with hands restrained behind her back, held at Hyuga damn Neji's mercy, it felt like the end of the world. How could she have lost? She had never lost against an age mate. One thing was Shisui, Itachi or her parents, but Haruhi had never failed against someone her own age. The match was called. She was let go, but as she rolled over, Haruhi smacked away the hand Neji offered. She didn't need his help. Haruhi, Fumino-sensei scolded her. Form the seal of reconciliation. It's obligatory. Reluctantly, she accepted the Hyuga's hand. Neji smirked, making his split lip bleed more. Tsk, is that all a girl of the Uchiha clan is capable of? I should have figured. And that sealed their fate. From that moment, Haruhi decided she hated Neji with a smoldering rage fitting for any member of her fire-breathing clan. That was the day Haruhi began putting all her efforts into taijutsu alone. Of course, she'd always been training to improve, but Haruhi already knew she was more a genjutsu and ninjutsu type. Chakra manipulation came easier to her, but it wasn't enough, and like hell if that bastard Hyuga was allowed to think he was superior. The abrupt ferocity she threw herself into taijutsu practice raised a couple of eyebrows from her family. When did you become so focused on taijutsu? Her mom asked, brushing fingers through Harui's hair. I thought you favored ninjutsu. You've wanted help with genjutsu for a while too, but now you'd rather run around the forest? My class is still learning basic chakra molding and the 12 basic seals, and I already know how to do all that. We're ages away from starting anything with genjutsu. For now my focus should be taijutsu. Is this about Shisui? Are you angry? Mom sighed. I know you wanted your brother to train you in genjutsu, but he can't control when he gets missions. I know he's busy. You all are. Mom was always at the police station. Dad spent long hours at the barrier division, and Shisui was being sent on missions, leaving Harui alone most afternoons, passing the hours training or seeking out the nearest available cousin for a sparring partner. It was usually Sasuke. I'm sorry, sweetling. I'm stuck at the station most evenings, and your father is under a lot of pressure at the barrier division. Mom hesitated. But I'll find the time to help with genjutsu if you need it. There's also the clan. Your aunt Mikoto is very good too. Thanks, Mom, but I'll stick to taijutsu for now. A bit miffed, her mom accepted that. Harui didn't tell her the truth. She was too ashamed of her loss. She'd heard all her life the Uchiha were the strongest clan in Konoha, but also that they were only as strong as its weakest member. So what did it say that both Uchihas in her year were losing to a Hyuga? Besides her new training focus, Harui also spent a significant portion of her academy lunches doing careful intel gathering, read noisy spying, on her rival. From observing Neji, she noticed a couple habits she might be able to weaponize, but it was Shiho who ended up giving her the best ammunition of all. Why are you spying on Neji-kun? Shiho asked during a sunny lunch break, ducking down to join Harui's hiding spot behind the fence. Between the cracks, they could see Neji sitting with Makaro and Yatoko. I'm not. Harui lied. You are. You've been spying on Neji-kun since you lost the class spar. Shiho said without beating around the bush. That was a fluke, Harui insisted. Next time I will win, she swore. I just need to learn his weaknesses. So your newfound hobby of stalking is in pursuit of plotting your revenge? Shiho nodded. I knew you were following him, but I couldn't deduce why. I've been unsure whether it's because you love him or loathe him. I loathe him! Harui said with fervor, making exaggerated puking expressions at the suggestion it could be anything else. Boys are stupid! Boys have cooties! And I will defeat Neji! Why? Why? What do you mean, why? I lost to you in a spar too, Harui-chan, but I'm not angry. We had a fair fight and I lost because you were better. Why are you angry that Neji was better than you? It was just a practice spar. Stumped, Harui stared speechless at his being, momentarily sure Shiho had to be an alien, possessing an academy student and failing to blend in. Because how could she attend Ninja Academy with so little ninja pride? Neji is not better than me! How can you think... He's the worst! And he's mean! He made fun of my clan, Shiho-chan! You may not get it, but that's like a big deal. So for the sake of the Uchiha, I need to prove that stupid Hyuga is not as great as he thinks he is. I see. Clan politics. That makes sense. And you're figuring out his weaknesses before you matched up again. Shiho mused. That's a clever approach. Exactly. Shiho shifted, eyes dashing around for any eavesdroppers, but said quietly, If it's of interest to your quest of vengeance, I might know something useful. Harui leant in. You do? What is it? Considering everything, it was low of him to bring up your clan. Shiho leaned even closer, pointing out something very interesting. Have you noticed how Neji-kun reacts when someone talks about his clan? Harui's weeks of effort weren't in vain, and Neji got an ugly surprise during their following spar. The Hyuga Prats had better taijutsu moves. They were refined in a way she hadn't been exposed to before, and he used his 1-inch height advantage to infuriating effect. Harui could admit that, if only in the privacy of her mind, but Harui had passion, and she was currently carrying a very wounded pride. Motivation was a big part of fighting, and the willpower to succeed could be just as paramount as skill. She had both aplenty, and though it was by no means easy, nothing worth fighting for ever is, Harui sent Neji bleeding out of the ring with immense satisfaction. "Harui-chan wins," Funano-sensei called. When a stony-faced Neji was forced to do the reconciliation seal, Harui unleashed the final blow, ending the match just as Neji had. I guess I shouldn't have expected better from a Hyuga branch member. Shio's observation against Neji's resentment against the main family worked better than her wildest dreams. Was he about to cry? Had she gone too far? But he'd insulted Uchiha first. If Neji couldn't take the heat, he shouldn't dish it out. Harui didn't know what the difference between a Hyuga branch member or the main family was. The Uchiha did nothing like it. And at the end of the day, wasn't the important thing that the insult worked? This was all part of Harui's carefully plotted revenge, and it had gone so well. Though at that, she basically declared war. And as much as Harui had the proof, perhaps Neji was in a similar situation, because neither were willing to give an inch. Neji proved just as capable of throwing himself into borderline reckless training, and over the next few matches they kept switching between who lost and won. Their matches became something of a spectacle within the class, because they took it so damn seriously, and in their rush to outdo one another, quickly grew to a higher level than the rest. In the beginning, it was girls versus boys, female solidarity versus guy power all the way, but then the lines blurred. It suddenly dawned on Taiko he was cheering for a Hyuga instead of a fellow Uchiha, and he hurriedly switched sides in fear Harui would tattle to his uncle. Then Tenten got a crush on Neji and switched to cheering for him instead, and it just snowballed from there. It went so far Fumino-sensei kept them at opposite ends of the classroom and stopped pitting the two against each other to prevent further escalation. As if it mattered. It's not like they lacked for alternatives. There are plenty other subjects to compete in, be it who got better scores in katas, the better times at lapses, better chakra manipulation grades, hand seal precision, maths, or even who had the better calligraphy. There are plenty of subjects to compete in, and everything was a battlefield. It cost her sweat, tears, blood, and all of angry rants from Taiko and Shiho to suffer through. Yet 6 months into Harui's first year at the academy, they were handed the official semester rankings, and she almost fell out of her seat in relief. She was number 1! Ha! Harui did a twirl of happiness, so relieved she could float away. Shio giggled, not too bothered to have ranked at number 18 in their year, while Taiko shrugged and accepted his number 4 spot on the overall rankings. Across the classroom, Neji sat with his nose in his report card, but she just knew he was fuming. Harui smirked. As if he could see through the back of his head, Neji turned sharply, and his glare knocked the air right out of her. He hated her. That was her gut reaction, because his eyes looked terrifyingly angry, veins bulging, vessels straining with the intensity of his glare. Being beaten on the semester rankings was too much for him, and now Neji was ready to murder her in the middle of the classroom. Until Harui realized what it truly was. Neji's eyes were blazing fierce with his activated Byakugan. Oh. The ocular bloodline limit of the Hyuga clan. Neji could already use it. Harui had grown used to coming home to an empty house, but today her dad's sandals were already on the shoe rack when she put up her own. "Dad?" Harui called, peering down the left hallway towards the bedroom and office without getting an answer. So she turned right instead, down the hallway, past the bathroom, kitchen, and found him reading the newspaper in the living room. "Dad! You're home early!" Academy is already over, huh? Her dad said, glancing over the edge of the paper. He didn't smile. Not doing afternoon training? He asked, sounding like he thought she should have been. I will. Haruhi didn't know why, but there was a bubbling nervousness building in her tummy, growing more pronounced from simply stepping through the doorway. Her excitement that he was home early faded. Dad looked tired. Dad, I got my first semester grades today. She took out her report card and presented it. There was a little tremble in her fingers, but she made it stop. He'd be proud of her, right? Her dad sighed, put the newspaper on the table before he accepted the card, reading it through an expectant silence that dragged into the uncomfortable. He was a quick reader, so why wasn't he saying anything? I am the top of my year. Overall, yes, her dad agreed. But you're not first in every class. You're number 2 in taijutsu. She flinched. Haruhi had hoped he'd see she was first in all the other classes, but taijutsu was listed first. Taijutsu is a base subject, Haruhi, and don't mistake basic to mean less important, something to skip because you're a girl. I don't! She knew he'd worked a lot lately, but hadn't Dad noticed how much he'd been working on taijutsu? Good, because it's not something that can be dismissed in favor of more glamorous chakra tricks. Quite the contrary. Everything is built upon your ability to move. Yes, Dad. Why was he saying that? She knew. Her dad kept lecturing her, somehow answering as if he'd picked a thought from her head. The world isn't a fair place. In a few years, the boys in your class will grow bigger and have natural advantages over you. But for now, you're still on even footing. If anything, you need to apply yourself better to prepare yourself for that day, or you'll be overlooked in favor of other shinobi. You could get hurt, killed even. Her dad said, getting worked up. Being a girl won't stop an enemy from hurting you just because you're smaller. Being a girl won't stop your fellow Konoha ninja from taking teachers or opportunities from under your nose. Solid taijutsu is a base requirement to make it as a ninja, to survive it, to thrive. I've beaten Neji and don't make excuses, Haruhi. Her father cut her off. If you were the best at taijutsu, the scores would reflect it. They don't. Only diligent work gains results. At your age, your brother was a genin. Haruhi's gaze dropped to the floor. Yes, father. There was a long silence where Haruhi regretted showing him her report card. She should have waited. But would it have made a difference? Maybe this was how it is. Haruhi had eyes. Dad was bigger than Mum. He was a Jonin and she Chunin. It was extremely competitive for anyone to reach Jonin, but only 1 out of 20 ninja who made it to that level were female. And no wonder. With a single glance at her classmates, she could count 3 times as many boys compared to girls. The ninja occupation was heavily dominated by boys, and most kunoichi gravitated towards supporting roles on their teams too. Dad's hand fell onto her shoulder. His hold was a little stiff, but his voice had a forced sort of calm to it. That said, it's good you're taking your other subjects seriously. He handed back her report card. When you get older, you'll likely need ninjutsu and genjutsu to get the edge in a fight. You weren't born a boy. That makes a difference in a fight where 80% of your enemies will be bigger. But unlike them, you were born an Uchiha, and that gives you an edge. I expect you'll keep this up, but make sure you improve your taijutsu too. Don't make excuses. Get better. I will, father. Her report card wrinkled up within her clenched fist while Dad went back to his seat, picked up the newspaper and kept reading. Haruhi padded back out the living room, past the kitchen and hallway to the other section of the house with the bedrooms. She had big shoes to fill. Shisuini hadn't only been a genin at her age, he'd been fighting in the 3rd Great Ninja War. He'd nearly been Chunin. How could Haruhi compare? Frustrated tears pressed against her eyes, but she forced them back. Haruhi had tried her hardest, she really had, but she'd failed her own expectations as much as her dad's. Haruhi had been so sure she had this. But now her first year was halfway done, and not one of her teachers were hinting Haruhi should graduate early. Of course they wouldn't. Second in taijutsu. Unacceptable. Haruhi let the anger fuel her, using it to push back the tears welling in her eyes as she headed to do her chores. Dad just wanted her to be safe in a dangerous field, even if his lessons were ones she didn't like to think of. How often didn't Haruhi use her height and size to win against Sasuke? But he was younger. Neji was a little taller than her, and that alone made a difference. One day, Haruhi might not be the tallest among her, Taiko, and Sasuke anymore. Someday, working hard wouldn't make up the differences she was up against. She had to be smart and prepared too, and Dad was warning her while she still had time. As a future kunoichi, she had to be tough. When boys grew up, they had an easier time building muscles that'd take 10 times the effort for Haruhi to replicate. So she just had to keep working 10 times as hard. There was no time to waste. Grabbing a mop and filling a bucket with water, Haruhi began scrubbing with vigor, putting in 10 times as much effort with every swipe that she was almost polishing the floors. She might not be a boy, but Haruhi was born with advantages too, and the day she activated the Sharingan, she swore to abuse it for all it was worth.